Hey, everybody, welcome to another workshop series with us. Another half hour as we dive into bottling your culture with Blair from Altruistic Coaching. Thanks, Blair, for joining with us. This is in partnership with Parkland Chamber of Commerce. And if you're interested in some other workshop series that we have going on, they're either on our YouTube channel where you're probably watching this now, or you can find them again on our Bankert.ca and then look for the workshops tab. We've got a whole bunch coming up over the rest of the year, and we're excited about it. So, Blair, thank you so much for being here. And I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you roll with it.
You bet. Thanks, Richard. Hello to everyone, those that are catching this after the live video, those that are on with us right now live, thanks for showing up during your lunch hour or wherever you may be at. So when Richard and I have known each other for a few years, and through our association, working on a nonprofit board, really connected, and with that, I've become a client of Richard. So he's got to know me a little bit and what Altruistic Coach is all about. I have 40 years in the business world, spent 35 of them as a family business partner, and left that partnership in 2017. Took a bit of a hiatus, started some other businesses with my wife, and have since handed some of those businesses over to our own children, and they're now running them and working on a new adventure right now, which is a bit of an old adventure. My family business background was in the insurance industry as a brokerage owner, and I'm diving back into that with a new partner, hopefully with the addition of our son. So over my years of being in business, always looked at what we did well as a family business, and then also looked at what we did poorly. And didn't really matter which one I was looking at. It was always how do you improve those things. And with that journey, I've got many tools in my toolbox for coaching that I use, and I don't consult. What I've come to learn is consulting is me giving you my opinion, and nobody needs any more of the Blair Andrew opinion. What I've learned to do is allow people to learn how to pull out the truth of what they're dealing with from within. When you come up with your own answer, you're more apt to own it and instill it in the organization. So I just, as a coach, what I do is I help you draw the story out that you need to hear, that you know the answer. So that's the difference between being a coach and being a consultant. And that's what I love about being a coach. When it comes to the concept of bottling your culture, that's an area that when I was involved in the family partnership and we created two other companies because of the insurance industry the brokerage that we owned, what happens, and I've seen this not only in our own organization, but other organizations that I've coached and been asked for my opinion on. So there's the consulting comment. What happens in organizations is when you're in that startup fledgling place, you don't need to do strategic planning. You don't need structure in the organization because there's only four of us in the building or four of us in the company or organization. But what happens is when things start to pick up and get moving, we're so busy in the minutia of what we do that we forget about why it is, what was the genesis of the organization. And it's so important to hit the pause button and look at the genesis of the organization, especially if you got the founder around to say, why did we start doing what we do and why do we do it? And that's the start of bottling your culture. And I actually I don't have it with me here, but I actually provide a bottle with a sealer lid on it so that organizations can physically write out what's important to their organization and throw it in that bottle and keep it there as a symbol of why it is we do what we do. And if you're working with a nonprofit or whether working a for-profit business, we always have to have finances, and the finances tell us the journey we've been on. And I say that because that will reflect on our culture and let us know how our culture is doing. The finances don't necessarily tell us whether we're winning or losing, but they do tell us where we've come from. So that's a different lesson for another day. But when it comes to bottling your culture, people, it's the genesis of the organization and understanding that if you do not define it, write it down, put it on a wall, your your employees and your staff, they will define your culture for you. And does it mean it's a terrible thing? Not necessarily, but it's very important for you to lay out why you do what you do. And I know I keep sounding like a broken record on it, but it's so integral to the longevity of an organization. If your goal isn't to have longevity of an organization, then this talk likely doesn't interest you. When you write down and you capture the culture of your organization, uh, that's your inward looking statement. That's your why we do what we do for all of the team within. The other part of that is your corporate innate ability statement, which is how you do it, which is what you give to the clients. You know, at Altruistic Coach, our tagline is we do relational leadership differently. That's the outward facing. The inward facing, the bottling your culture statement is growing authentic relationships in a vulnerable way to encourage people to honor their true selves. We coach. We want to pour into you. We want to be vulnerable with you as a client to allow you to grow and understand who you are and the importance that that has in your organization. And that is all about your culture. So with Altruistic Coach, we have the client facing nice little tagline that we've synthesized down, which plays part of your corporate culture. But the most important part is your people understanding why you do what you do as an organization. I just was sharing with Richard this morning that I just did a coaching session with a client, blue collar organization, and we talked about doing debriefs after a job site incident and not necessarily negative, a safety incident. Just we talked about what went on their job site, and so often we assume that people understand why we do what we do, and without clear communication, that message gets lost. And as you add people, you grow from, in my background as a family insurance brokerage, I was employee number four with mom and dad and our secretary in the office, and I became the fourth employee. When I left in 2017, we had three companies. I had 17 offices and 120 people under my watch, and nothing was recorded. Um, People didn't understand the the why we did what we did as a family business. And it's a great story, and it's something that, sadly didn't get shared with other people. So today, when I was working with this construction firm, it was the importance of clear communication. You can't assume that people are going to understand it. There's a great tagline, a saying that I use all the time. The problem with communication is the assumption it's taken place. So the bottle your culture, if you run a department and you're not the owner, operator of the company, I don't care. Your department can have a culture. You can define that culture, and you should define that culture. And so that everybody that's under your care and your watch understands what it is that you do in your department. And then if you own a business or run an organization, it's the same message. And it's something that we can do at any time. You don't have to be a startup. If the organization is big and you think they've lost their way, bring it back to your little microcosm that you have control over and create that culture. How do you go about doing that? The genesis of why you are where you are is a great way of doing it. And it really doesn't matter, you know, when your people that report to you understand why you're in the position you're in, whether you're an owner, whether you're a manager, supervisor, you still have a story to share. We don't like talking about ourselves, but it's really important for people to understand how how important it is that your role has impacted you in your life to this day. When I do a Genesis story with a client, I'll take them back to their childhood because there's things that have happened that has formed the way they are and why they do what they do to this day. Um, and it's an area we don't do in business. I've said that before that, we always talk about the numbers, the financial statement. We always talk about efficiencies, but the hardest skill to work with is your people skills, your soft skills as they call them. And that's the hardest skill out there is your people skills, your soft skills. So, and that's an area that it's a selfless plug for Altruistic Coach, but that's what we do is I'm not here to talk to you about your financials or structure of your organization. I'm here to talk about the culture of your organization. And that's what we coach on. If if you as the owner don't know why you do what you do, your vision drift will happen and you'll be all of a sudden a different company that wasn't your plan. So Um, that's really I know Richard gave me 30 minutes. I'm just giving you the quick pitch. Anybody that's on the call that wants to ask me questions about what I've unloaded in a hurry here, I'm more than open to have those conversations. Um, so with that, I'm just going to slow things down a little bit and see if there's anybody that has any questions of me on what I've said so far. I'm not sure if that's how you run it, Richard, but that's what I'm going to do.
No, that's totally fine. I think one thing that might be helpful is if you explain the Genesis side of things. By that, you're meaning the beginning.
It is, Richard. Yeah, the Genesis story. So for my family business, I was a fourth generation broker owner, and I didn't have a great great grandfather kicking around to ask the question. I did have a dad around until 2003, and I didn't have that knowledge. I've asked my mother. She's fortunately still with us, and she had some involvement in the business, but you know, my question to mom was, why did dad care so much as a business owner? Like I spent 6 years under his tutelage, so you know, I can't go back 120 years to find the real Genesis story, Richard, but you can start the Genesis story at any time. And
Sure.
so for me as a, you know, entrepreneurial guy, my Genesis story I keep going back into my past to going, why am I the way I am? I know part of it's my dad. He had a great impact, but you know, what is it that's caused me to be the way I am in business today? So the older we are, the longer the Genesis story, obviously, but it's something that your people need to hear because I did the very first time I did a Genesis story with a client and it was a concept. I'd never done it before, and it was such an impactful journey for his well, their because of the husband and wife team, their staff heard things, and they had a staff that had been with them for 15 years, had never heard any of these stories, and it became part of their corporate message. We couldn't ignore it, and it had nothing to do with the industry they were in. And that's it's no different with our tagline and our corporate statement at Altruistic Coach. It has everything to do with everybody else, but nothing to do with us as an individual. And the same thing happened to them. So without drawing that origin story or genesis out of people, Richard, there's so much culture that gets left. And again, as individuals, we don't like talking about ourselves. And that's why you need that other person to really come and draw it out of you and capture it so that we can synthesize that down into a really unique statement. Because the insurance industry is an example from where I came from and I'm back into again as a business opportunity. How do you make, ABC insurance broker stand out from any other brokerage out there? And because we all sell insurance, and it's not your Genesis story bottling, which allows us to bottle the culture, gives you such a unique statement for the world to hear. And that'll make you different than every other business in your industry.
I think too, when we've discussed this in the past, you've talked a lot about by bottling your culture, you mean capturing it
Yep.
and putting it together so that you as an organization understand sort of the base core foundation of your culture and have a true reality of what it actually is versus what you think that it is. But then also it ties into succession and into uh, the next steps of business because now you know what you're passing on or you have a better idea of what you're passing on and you can maybe adjust your culture a little bit if it's off from what you actually think it is.
Yeah, there's definitely some ownership to where you're when you uncover it, going, yeah, that's who we want to be, or it gives you the opportunity to make some adjustments and continue, you know, um, measuring and monitoring the changes that need to be made as an organization. And this isn't necessarily a small mom and pop operation concept, Richard. Part of my learning tools that mentors that don't even know that they're mentors to me, guys like Bob Chapman that runs and ran a multinational company with 55,000 employees, has a culture concept that's just phenomenal. And I keep leaning on his books that he's written and understanding them more. And there's other big CEO firms out there that have done this. So I know it's possible regardless of the size of an organization.
My next question was if you were to give someone like the 5 steps of what they could do just like right now in order to start down that road, what would that 5 step process be to have this conversation with your leadership team?
The first step is you've got to get it out from between your ears and get it documented. It is the first step to bottling your culture. Really, I think it behooves every organization to find that independent third party outside voice, and that's not a pitch for altruistic coach. I think if as the 25, well, I won't go back to my 25-year-old self, but I've been in business for 40 years, so you back that up. If I knew then what I knew now, Richard, get yourself a coach. That would
Hmm.
be the first step. And then get it out of your head onto paper. Um, have the sessions with the team. It's so much about the team that's there has their imprint is on your organization. And if it's your core group and you trust them emphatically, they are already impacting your culture. So if you don't define it, it'll get defined. We call it the default model of culture. It'll happen and you may not like what the default model is because you haven't defined it for everybody. So as you grow, and that's what I talk about is, while we're a small organization, there's only 4 or 5 of us. Why do we need to do that now? Because when you double in size, you no longer have the cycles or the interest to worry about. There will be a point, and I was part of that organization. We did a few of the things right, and then we got too busy and we didn't finish that part of it in my mind well. My old partners might think different of my statement, but that's not that we were wrong. It was just different. And to me, get a coach, get it out of your head, bring the team in for discussion, um, refine it, and get comfortable with it. It's not like it's a one and done. When I talk about creating relationships in a vulnerable way to encourage people to honor their true selves, That took me a long time to get that sentence hashed out. I played with the words and moved it around, but that ended up being who Altruistic Coach is. And guess what? It's very much Blair Andrews' own personal innate ability statement. But as a company of two, which is myself and my wife, um, we both live that out. We're going, yeah, that's what we do. So small company, we can do it. Bigger companies can do it as well.
So how do you think that that has impacted or will impact new hires? Because I think about, some of our organizations, say 10, 15 people, and then we bring on the 16th person. I am just as a business owner, I'm thinking it will eliminate a little bit of stress in terms of the foundation if you already have that in place because they're not coming in wondering, what is this place about?
Yeah, it's a great question, Richard. And with a couple of my clients that I've worked with, it very much has an impact. Both companies now have good people seeking them out to become part of their team. The culture, because their people believe in it. So when I started, both companies are that I'm working with. When I started with them, they were 10, 12 employees, and now they're in that 18 to 22 employee range, and they don't have to advertise. They have people coming to them wanting to join their organization because their people are living out the culture because they now understand it's not assumption. Is osmosis only takes us so far. So that's why it's important to allow the core group of an organization buy in, believe it, and be a part of it because they're going to own it and they're going to think like an owner. And that's as an employer or as a lead in an organization, you want people to feel like they've got skin in the game and they have a reason to be there. Well, they do, and they help you define the culture, and they get to own it, and that's what you want.